Sukkot is so special too, because it's like another.
It's like another tent, right? Okay, so the next story is also about the Baal Shem Tov, and it's about the Klipa of Anger. How do you say Klipa?
Shell.
Shell, right? The shell of anger.
That's how I know it.
So when we told basically, to Moses, we want water from this rock, and Moses tells us, you want me to get water out of this rock, and then Moshe, hits the rock, and this all my and this and water comes out, right? But he actually gets angry at the people, and he actually says, you want me to get water out of this rock? Like, are you guys kidding? But it's not just about the, I mean, you can look at it from different perspectives, what is Moshe believing in that moment? And water is also considered Torah. But what again is Torah? Torah is not just talking divrei Torah. Torah is speech is the sphere of malchut. Like if we have the sphere of Keter, which is the highest one, and we have malchut, which is the lowest one, which actually refers to how we appear in the world. It's also connected to speech, because speech is the way we appear in the world, right? How we talk to people is what it's like. You remember, the expression, like people say, I didn't mean it. Right. Well, I don't know what you meant. Right. All I know is what I heard, right? Yeah. I either heard bad words or I heard bad intonation. I heard cynicism. I heard whatever, I heard anger, aggression. Or aggression, right? Or I heard, love and, and sweetness. And what did I hear, right? So it's like, okay, so the shell of anger. One time, the Baal Shem Tov came to a rich man, and this rich man was making vodka. And he had 24 gallons of vodka. Ooh. And he had,
2 days worth.
And he had a lot of workers there. And one time he saw that there was no order, and like the owner of the place saw that there was balagan there, and he got really angry about the people, the workers, that they're causing him to lose money. And in this balagan that everything is happening, and he's getting angry at his workers, he heard that the Baal Shem Tov came. So he ran towards the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov says to him, like he doesn't know who he is, "Who are you?" And the owner of the vodka place says, "The rabbi doesn't recognize me. I'm the owner of this place." So the Baal Shem Tov says to him, "If I didn't know that you were living here, I wouldn't believe that you were the owner of this place. Because the shell of anger, that you were just angry at your people, completely disguised who you are." Wow. It's like you were wearing a mask of someone else, right? And you were unrecognizable. And I really want to encourage you not to ever be angry again. And I also, he says, the Baal Shem Tov, listen to this is unbelievable. The Baal Shem Tov says, I also take upon myself to never be angry at anyone again. Ooh. And even at my horse driver, because I saw what anger does to our faces. Yeah.
I wonder why he specifically pointed out his horse driver.
Right, because maybe that was his trigger in life.
I guess so.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Learn a little bit about him.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking first when I read this story. And then I thought I could maybe interpret it two ways. Mm-hmm. One is that maybe it gives us a little window into the Baal Shem Tov being a human, mm-hmm. and working on himself too. Mm-hmm. And understanding, how he grew in life through meeting people and, seeing different interactions and understanding what it does to our soul, right? That he was just working through life, just like we are.
If you're human, you're going to get angry.
You can't never get angry again. It's an unrealistic expectation, maybe not for the Baal Shem Tov, but for people like us. We're going to get angry, but we don't have to harp on it or enlarge it or, right?
I feel that as life goes by, first of all, I get much, much less angry, if at all. But I'm asking myself, not because I'm so holy, but because I just feel like it's a waste of time. It's like it ruins my energy. It takes the first time I learned it was when I was like really angry, and I realized my blood pressure is going up. I'm the one who's getting into hyperventilation. Like I'm the one who's extra suffering. I'm the one who's being double punished. Once for the stupidity of this someone who did something, and once by the actual anger that I'm going through. So it's bad enough that whatever happened happened. I don't need to double punish myself with my anger.
Why pay
Yeah,
twice?
your father used
Right.
to say, "Why pay twice?"
Exactly. Exactly. Plus, sometimes it actually makes the people who got you angry very happy to see you angry.
Yes.
So then you actually reward them with your anger.
Uh-huh.
That's really upsetting.
Yeah. Can we go to the horse driver?
Yes, 1 second. But
Okay.
the second thought I wanted to say is that I feel that the question that I'm dealing with more is, does anger become quiet resentment
Oh.
that is not acting out as anger, but is sitting there and eating us up?
And
Which-
becomes
which-
passive aggressive behavior.
Passive
Which
aggressive
makes
is
you-
almost like
Can-
anger. It's the same. It's
That's
it's
what I
almost
mean.
the same.
It's it's the same.
But the question is,
Yeah.
even if I'm not acting it out, even in a passive aggressive way, and that's my next, I feel like my next task in life
Yeah,
is to get rid of any resentment that is still sitting there.
Mhm.
yeah. Psychologists say it builds up, and then you get super angry at the wrong person.
Right, but it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that
Mhm.
acting it out helps you more dealing with it.
Right.
So it's two different things that I feel need to be dealt with: is the active anger and the quiet resentment that is sitting in us. And sometimes it boils us up, with high blood pressure. We have the doctor here who can tell us more about it, or whatever it is, right? That is eating on our health on all levels. So I need to get rid of that too.
How?
I think by looking at things and saying, um, medication.
He's a doctor.
Yeah, I believe in self work more. That we say, I was watching this documentary about a family with this highly functioning autistic child, and they're super Haredi, they from Hasidus, and they got married, with shidduch. They basically met twice. Anyway, their marriage is something to really get inspired by, right? And I was thinking, okay, so she was very bitter. She was bitter about her marriage, even though she had a wonderful marriage, but she just couldn't contain it because she felt like she was forced into it. And but she had the best husband in the world, and they had the best relationship, and like you could see their relationship through the movie. It's like it's deep, it's communicative, it's touchy, it's feely, it's everything.
So where did her resentment come from?
And her resentment comes from two things: lack of choice, Haredi world, lack of choice, and second, that she got this autistic child, who she loves very much, but she feels that if she wasn't pushed into it at 20 years old, she would have had different tools to deal with it. And but in the end, what I was thinking when I was looking at this documentary, and is what I say to myself in every situation in life: I got this, she got that, we all get something, right? Because we all need to grow in this life, emotionally, spiritually.
Hardwired for struggle.
Yes, exactly. And so whatever happens to me in life, I learn to accept with more acceptance, with more love, that this is what Hashem had given me. And sometimes I get inspired by very heartbreaking stories. I don't know if that's good either, but but I guess it's better than nothing. And I think it gives value to those heartbreaking stories that if at least, like, like we say every Yom HaZikaron, we say, Bemotam tzivu lanu et hachaim. In their death, they attributed life to us. Means that we need to live bigger because they're not living anymore. I feel like, it's like, I just heard this amazing story about my nephew that like I'm just realizing what a tzaddik was amongst us and we didn't even know it. Like just, it's a little bit in parenthesis, but it's like, I feel like it has to do something with this too, because sometimes we just, like we have all these holy people around us and we don't realize that we can learn something from them. We take them for granted. And so like this, my nephew who died, Hanan, who was killed in Gaza, and his brother, they went to a concert one night. And his brother, 2 years younger, was like so thrilled about the concert. And he was like totally taken away with it. And Hanan was sitting there kind of like, okay, good concert, but not a big deal, And then they went out, and this is like one of the top musicians here in Israel. I won't say a name because I don't want to dirt, there, but a soully music, like a heart music, and they went out, and how was the music? And okay, whatever. Then they hear like this very like kind of primitive, like very low level keyboard playing from somewhere. So Hanan just gets magnetized to it and he starts, let's go see where the music is coming from. And they get to this place and there's this whatever Haredi guy with a few children around him eating cholent and singing some Jewish music. And it's very low level, like not high level music, right? And Hanan is just like he's in bliss. He's like he's in seventh heaven. And he says, you see, this is music. Right? So it's like, and he says, for this music, you need a soul to hear it.
It resonated with him.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like this story came into my, association because of this, discussion, because like we're living very small. We're living very much on this earth. And we're not letting our soul thrive and grow into like a different dimension. And I feel like when all these, like sometimes, so we're continuing to live small, and each one of us like can, hear this story or that story. And the last, 2 years are like, like what I posted right on Shabbat Shalom. Have you seen this? This soldier, he lost 2 arms and a leg, and his one eye, and
Yeah.
and he has a smile from here to Africa. And
It's only like 10 minutes left.
yeah, and he has a smile from here to Africa, right? And he says, "Thank you, Am Yisrael, for praying for me. I was desperately injured. I almost lost my life, and thanks to your prayers, I'm back, and and I'm smiling, and life is great, right?" Or like Eli Sharabi, who lost both his daughters and his wife and his brother, and sat 600 days in the tunnels, and he says, "I'm the happiest person in the world," right? Like. So yeah. He says, I'm the happiest person in the world. Why? Because what kept me in the tunnels was thinking that I'll get out and see my wife and children, because he really believed that that they were alive from the situation that was happening there. He was made to believe that the terrorists weren't going to kill her and the girls, and then he came out and to the worst news, right? And like, what keeps a man going after that?
Yeah.
But right, but we can all be special. right? We can all find it within ourselves. We could say that I'm not special. It's fine. I could say I'm not special. I could say that is attributed to only some people. But I don't want to live that way. It makes me shrink. It makes me unhealthy, emotionally, spiritually, and eventually physically too, right?
Right.
So I prefer to look at life like life is much, much bigger. And I can strive to be like those amazing people. I could leave it up to them, but I don't want to leave it up to them. I want to be inspired by them. So I feel like this is what I tell myself every time the resentment grows in me. Like the active anger is growing less in me, and quite a few years already now, Baruch Hashem. But the resentment I feel is still sitting there a little bit. And every time it grows, I try to tell myself, you can have a different perspective over life. You can look at things differently. So it helps, it reduces it gradually with like the emunah. This is what Hashem had given you. Those are the tools that He had put in front of you to work on your soul, to grow bigger. So use it instead of being bitter about it. There's actually something beautiful also that he says here. He says for some people, anger is a working tool for them. Some managers think that without putting their fear on their workers, they can't run their workers, and they don't understand that with their anger, they actually can ruin their whole life project. When you're angry, you're basically saying out in a way like you're not the owner of the place, right? Because you're basically saying you make me. It's like it's easier to understand it, especially I think with our children. What happens when we are angry at our children or grandchildren, a small child? It's like I don't have the emotional capacity to deal with what you're putting in front of me. So what is that child is thinking, can think, what kind of an adult are you that you can deal with a 5-year-old?
Or they become crushed.
Right?
It kills their soul.
It kills their soul. But in the meantime, subconsciously, they could be thinking that. Maybe they don't have the words to think it really.
Maybe by the time
But
they're 10,
that's the subcontext, right? That's the subtext. So
we learned that if you get angry at your child and it's an offense which requires you to give them a patch, then you have to wait till you're not angry anymore.
Yeah.
And then if you still feel it's warranted, you give them a patch.
I realized the patch is not worth anything. It's what I realized with the years, that a patch is all it's leaving behind is the trace of the trauma of the patch. They don't remember what they were patched for. They only remember the insult. If it wasn't painful physically, they remember the insult, and if it was painful physically, they remember the pain and the emotional and the physical pain.
Right.
So they don't remember. The more it's traumatic,
Right.
and physical, not necessarily more traumatic than emotional. They remember the trauma. They don't remember why they were punched and they shouldn't do it again. And anyway, I realized with the years, it took me, until my second one, because I grew up in a very Russian family. So
What does that
punching,
mean?
like punching, there was like, punching was, it wasn't punching, it was abuse. It was like physical abuse. So, but in the end, it got into me a little bit too, and with like a lot of like whatever. Back then, there were still books that were talking about it, but anyway, I realized at some point that I don't encourage, any kind of punches, and
Anger in itself is devastating enough to a child.
right,
Whether it's directed
Right.
at the child or over the child, when one parent directed at the other parent
right,
with the child present, that takes away the kid's soul.
totally. I agree with you 100%. Yeah. I saw how from one punch, I couldn't say that I gave much more, like one here, one there. I remember how my child, like a 2-year-old, I don't even remember I mean, look how stupid it is. I punched him and I don't even remember what I punched him for, right? And it wasn't like I punched him left and right every day, right? But at 2 years old, I gave him like a little punch on the diaper and he started crying. It took a month that I saw the fear in his hands, in his eyes, when I came to embrace him or love him.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and that's when I
Maybe
realized
we're
no
talking about
punches.
different kinds of punches.
And this was on the diaper, like he didn't feel the pain. It wasn't on the face, God forbid. It wasn't painful on the hand. Nothing like that sort.
If our kids used to go for the plugs, we used to slap their hand.
Right? It must have been something like that.
Yeah.
But
What
it
do you
didn't.
do with a 2-year-old that hits
Or bites.
or bites?
It's just what they do.
Anything
That's-
that I learned like later, everything should be discussable. Not discussable in a way like, do you want to not hear your brother anymore? Not on that way, on level, but on the level of like, we're not doing this, and I'm gonna give you a bear hug until you calm down, and we're gonna talk about it. And
Time out.
What are you? Time out doesn't work.
Yeah,
What
time
are-
in.
Yeah,
Time in, actually.
yeah. Time in, exactly. Time in. Let's have what's going on? Why are you so upset? Right? So many times they come in and we don't, we didn't see the first part of the story. We only saw how they answered to a brother who was provocating them before, right? So it's like, it's really a time for a discussion of what's going on here. Why are you so overwhelmed that you got to the point of doing this?
It's also a developmental stage,
And,
an oral exploration
Also-
stage, and learning how
also-
to control that impulse to bite. And we must teach children how to do that.
Right, just not to do it.
Not
Right.
like why they're
Right.
upset, but no,
Right.
we don't bite.
Right.
It's a behavior that is.
They do
You need
it
to
much
control
earlier.
it.
They do it
Yeah.
less than a year old when they're still teething, when
Right.
it's completely has nothing to do with anger
Right, right,
right.
It's good.
Yeah.
right.
Right.
And
had the
hitting
threat.
also.
The strap was hanging in the closet.
Oh my
It was
God.
always a threat. But I think maybe my dad hit me once. I'm not even sure, I don't even remember. I did know he had a temper, whatever, not physically. That strap was hanging in that closet for 15 years.
The horse,
We're gonna take the strap out.
Baal Shem Tov's horse driver, that horse felt the strap, felt the whip on his back.
I guess so.
Is it better to be a horse whisperer?
Right.
And how do we want Hashem to treat us?
Right.
Because and then we're created in His image. It's said in the Torah that Hashem's strength is when He withholds His anger. But He does feel it. He does have it, but He withholds it. He figures out another way to work with us.
And why is it connected to this parsha? Or why is it connected to this verse? Because it's the whole idea that it says that if Moshe had spoken to the rock, the Mashiach would have come right there and then. So it teaches us basically that anything can be worked out through words.
This is not to interrupt, but I was wanting to talk about that because I was in shul and I really started to wonder what would have happened if Moses had spoken. And the guy next to me, I don't know whether he pulled this out of Midrash or whatever, but he said to me, Miriam and Aaron had just died.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
He was in mourning.
Yeah.
Moshe couldn't speak Torah, and the speaking to the water was speaking Torah. So he did what he could do. It's
Beautiful.
interesting.
Beautiful.
So he was obeying
He was in a,
commandments.
right. He was in a heartbroken stage.
Wow.
And it was hard for him to remember that basically what God had taught him, the Torah, that you talk to people, that you don't hit them. You talk to the rock, you talk to people.
Well,
But talking to Torah is not appropriate when you're mourning, maybe.
Maybe.
So
It was that time. Moshe also remembered what had happened 40 years before, when he was instructed to hit the rock. That was the tool. In the first time it was a tool, and the second time, this time, was a sela. It wasn't a tool.
What's the setup? I don't know.
They're both rocks.
But Tzur is also an anchor.
Tzur is also an anchor, and sela. If you take, this is really weird, and it's also, I don't know. It's just mind games. But sela is made up of the letters Samech, which has a mem, Lamed, which has a mem, and Ayin, which has a yud in it. So the Sela had water in it, Mayim. Sela had Mayim. All you had to do was ask, and it would come out. The Tzul, anchor rock, you had to hit in order for the water to come out. And I think, I agree with you 100%. He was in such emotional turmoil himself. I've got a sister who's now dying of cancer. My brother's also just gotten bad news. He's due for surgery as well. And I'm looking at, I'm mourning before the event, being afraid of losing my two siblings. And so you can only imagine what Moshe was going through. Even on his exalted status, he was a human being. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong because I didn't read the whole parsha, but I thought that Moshe also got angry at the people.
Yeah,
Or
you rebels.
You rebels!
Right,
You want me to get water from this rock, and it was his anger that, in fact, I read anyway. It was his anger as one of the main things that got him in trouble with Hashem, that he would not be allowed to. That was a huge punishment just for.
He taught us a great lesson in a very unusual way, because we're still talking about it.
Right.
Well, Miriam's,
Yeah, but God doesn't criticize him for his anger. He criticizes him for his lack of faith.
yeah, because
Not
Miriam was the
No,
well.
also, no, the anger actually.
Miriam was the well.
For not
Miriam
getting
was
into
the
the country
water.
is the anger.
And he,
Go ahead.
Miriam was the well. She was the source of water.
I know.
And he didn't see, he thought, Miriam's gone, we have no water. Do you want me to pull water out of a rock? What, are you crazy? She's gone, we don't have any water. Not looking to Hashem to provide the water.
So I heard and read a more positive interpretation. There's two kinds of miracles. There are miracles that are above and beyond nature, like the splitting of the Red Sea,
Supernatural.
and there are miracles that are of a natural origin.
Mm-hmm.
So that when the people of Israel in the first water incident, they had just come out of slavery, so they needed to see a supernatural miracle with the first one. And the second one, they're getting ready to go into the land. They have to learn to deal with reality. And so the second miracle would be a miracle where you had to do something in order to start the miracle to work.
Right.
And so he said to himself, even though he was commanded to talk to the rock, he said, I have to show them a miracle that they need to learn, do something, and then God will be your assistant. So that it was, in fact, a conscious decision, not correct from God's perspective, but a conscious decision that he made to do it the way he did it.
It was a teachable sin. He did something wrong that was right. It's really weird.
And we get a few stories like that in the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.